There's a morning in early September that I wait for all year long. The air has that first cool edge to it. Not cold, just cool enough that you feel it on the back of your neck when you step out with your coffee. The dew sits on the grass in little silver beads, and if you walk out barefoot the way I still do, you leave a dark trail behind you. That's the morning the grass wakes back up. After a long, hard summer of just hanging on, the roots start reaching again. And whatever you give your lawn in the next few weeks, it keeps. So most of us get in the truck and drive to the store, and we walk right past the one thing that would do the most good, and reach for the bag with the picture on it. I did that for 30 years, my friends. 30 years. Today I want to tell you about a plain paper bag in the back corner of the farm supply store. No picture, no slogan, just 3 numbers on the side. It costs about $2 to feed 1,000 square feet with it, and it will green your grass every bit as well as the bag that costs you 30. But I'm not handing you that and walking away. There are 3 mistakes people make with this stuff, and one will scorch your lawn in a weekend. There's also a trap at the store that has people paying 6 times more than they meant to, while standing there feeling clever. Stay with me. I'll walk you through all of it, the way I'd walk a neighbor through it over the fence. Let me start with a question. When you set that bag on the counter and hand over your money, what are you actually buying? Not the bag. Not the picture of the green lawn. Not the brand your father used. You're buying nitrogen. That's it. That's the whole thing. For an established lawn, nitrogen does the visible work. It puts color in the blade. It thickens the stand so weeds have nowhere to sit down. The University of Minnesota puts it as plainly as it can be put. For a home lawn, nitrogen is the most essential nutrient to add on a regular basis, and established lawns show very little response to added phosphorus. So the whole game is nitrogen. Which means the whole question is, what's the cheapest honest way to buy nitrogen? To answer that, you have to read 3 numbers. 4 minutes. And once you've got it, nobody can sell you a pretty bag again. Turn any bag around. 3 numbers with dashes between them. 10-10-10, 32-0-4, 6-4-0. Those are percentages by weight, and the first one is nitrogen. That's the one we care about. So a 12.5-pound bag marked 32-0-4 holds 32% nitrogen. 32% of 12.5 pounds is 4 pounds. 4 pounds of nitrogen in the bag. The other 8.5 is carrier, clay or limestone granules that give the spreader something to throw. Now here's the part almost nobody knows, and it changed how I feel about that plain bag entirely. Those 3 numbers are not advertising. They're a legal guarantee. Every fertilizer label in this country carries the same 5 things by law: brand and grade, the guaranteed analysis, directions for use, who registered it, and the net weight. And it's enforced. States like Maryland and New York pull random samples off store shelves and send them to a lab. If the nitrogen comes back below what the bag promised, there's a penalty. In Arizona, 3 times the value of what was missing. And that money doesn't go to the state. It goes to the person who bought the bag. Think about that. Somewhere there's a person whose job is to walk into a store, pick up a bag of fertilizer, and make sure it's telling you the truth. And they do that to the plain paper bag in the back corner, exactly the way they do it to the shiny one on the end cap. The number 46 on a plain bag isn't a boast. It's a promise somebody is checking. There's no conspiracy here. Nobody's hiding anything. The plain bag just doesn't have a marketing department, so nobody ever stood in front of a camera and told you about it. All right, now the arithmetic, because this is where it gets good. Take the price of the bag. Divide it by the pounds of nitrogen inside. That gives you cost per pound of nitrogen, one number that tells you more than every word printed on the package. That 12.5-pound bag of 32-0-4 at $25, 4 pounds of nitrogen, about $6.40 a pound. Golf course fairway fertilizer, 23-0-6. The USGA ran this math themselves. 50 pounds at $39 is about $3.40 a pound. The liquid jugs you hook to your hose, roughly $11 a pound. A 32-pound bag of popular organic lawn food, 6-4-0, at $40, 1 9/10 pounds of nitrogen in there, about $21 a pound. And urea, plain urea, 46-0-0. A 50-pound bag holds 23 pounds of nitrogen. At $30, that's $1.30 per pound of nitrogen. 130, 340, 640, 11, 21. Same nutrient. Same molecule going into the same grass plant. The University of Georgia even publishes a calculator so you can swap one for another, pound of nitrogen for pound of nitrogen. And a 50-pound bag of urea, spread at 1 pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet, covers about 23,000 square feet. For a 5,000 square foot lawn, that's 4.5 feedings, most of 2 seasons. That's the $2 in the title, and let me be square about it. It doesn't mean the bag costs $2. It means about $2 worth of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet, every time you feed. I'd rather give you the honest version than a rounder one. Now, before you go near a store, let me save you from something. This is where a lot of good advice goes wrong, and I've watched it happen. You've just heard urea is the cheap way. So you drive to the big box store, and there on a shelf is a nice little 5-pound tub marked 46-0-0. Convenient. Into the cart it goes. That tub runs about $18. 5 pounds at 46% is 2 3/10 pounds of nitrogen. $7.70 per pound of nitrogen. You just paid more per pound of nitrogen than the name brand bag you were trying to avoid. 6 times what the 50-pound bag would have cost. Same white granules, same number, same legal guarantee. The little tubs of the organic stuff are worse. 5 pounds of 6-4-0 at $15 works out to about $50 per pound of nitrogen. So here's the real secret, and it isn't about urea at all. It's about the size of the container. You're not being charged for fertilizer. You're being charged for convenience and shelf space. Any fertilizer, any brand, gets dramatically more expensive per pound of nitrogen the smaller the package gets. Buy the 50-pound bag. Farm and ranch supply, agricultural supply, and plenty of garden centers will order it if you ask by name, 46-0-0, or just say urea. It'll last 2 years. Now let me tell you what's actually in that bag, because this is my favorite part of the whole story. Go back to 1828. Every chemist in Europe believed something called vitalism. The idea was simple and rather beautiful. Living things carry a vital force, and certain substances can only be made by something alive. You could make salt in a laboratory. You could never make the stuff of life. Urea was the perfect example. It comes out of the body. Everyone agreed only a living creature could make it. Then a young German chemist named Friedrich Wöhler, working in Berlin, was fiddling with something else entirely. He added silver cyanate to ammonium chloride and warmed it. He wasn't trying to prove anything. White crystals formed in the dish. He looked at them and realized what they were. Urea. He had made it. On a bench, out of nothing that had ever been alive. On the 22nd of February, 1828, he wrote to his old teacher, the great Swedish chemist Berzelius. What he wrote has been quoted for nearly 200 years. He said he could make urea without needing a kidney, whether of a man or of a dog. You can hear the delight in it, can't you? A young man who's just watched a 2,000-year-old wall fall over in his own laboratory. But here's what stays with me. Wöhler wasn't only delighted. He was shaken. He'd believed in vitalism too, and he'd just broken something he loved. He wrote to Berzelius in a line anyone who's had to change their mind will recognize: the great tragedy of science, a beautiful hypothesis slain by an ugly fact. So that's what's in the plain bag in the back corner of the farm store, the compound that erased the line between the living and the not living. It isn't ordinary, my friends. It's humble. Those are very different things, and I think we forget that more often than we should. Now, how does it actually feed your grass? Here's what surprises people. Your grass doesn't eat urea. The soil does first. When those white granules land on moist soil, they meet an enzyme called urease, made by bacteria and fungi down there in numbers you couldn't count. Urease takes urea apart and turns it into ammonium, the form roots can actually pull up. Penn State, given enough moisture, urea reacts with water and that naturally occurring urease within 7 to 10 days. I think of it like yeast in bread dough. You don't eat flour. You put it somewhere warm and let something living work on it first. Your lawn's the same. You're not feeding the grass. You're feeding the little world underneath it, and that world sets the table. Which means everything comes down to one idea. Get the granules down where the workers are, not sitting up on the leaves. Hold on to that. It explains all three mistakes. And before we get there, something that ought to make you feel good about your lawn. Most farm crops use only about half the nitrogen put down for them. The rest leaks away. It's one of the oldest frustrations in agriculture. Turf recovers 85 to 90%. Your lawn is one of the most efficient users of nitrogen in all of agriculture, and it's right outside your kitchen window. It's not greed, it's the roots. A mat so dense it occupies nearly every crumb of soil in the top few inches, and it never takes a season off the way a row crop does. Which tells you two things. A small dose goes a long way, and a big dose is mostly wasted. Which brings us to mistake number one, and this is the one that hurts. Mistake number one is putting down too much. I understand the instinct. You've got the cheap bag now, 46% nitrogen, more than double the consumer bags, and a voice in the back of your head says, well, if a little is good. Please don't listen to that voice. Here's the number that keeps you safe, and it isn't my opinion. Purdue Extension states it flatly. No more than 1 pound of actual nitrogen per 1,000 square feet in any single application. Virginia Tech goes tighter for quick dissolving sources like urea. No more than 0.7 of a pound per active growing month. And in Maryland, it isn't a suggestion. It's state law. One application cannot exceed 0.9 of a pound of total nitrogen per 1,000 square feet, and no more than 0.7 of that soluble. Maryland also blacks out fertilizer entirely from November 15th to March 1st, and never on frozen ground or ahead of heavy rain. So when I say 1 pound per 1,000 square feet is the ceiling, understand, there are states where a person could be fined for going past it. That's how settled this is. What does 1 pound of nitrogen look like in the scoop? Divide 1 by 46 hundredths. 2 2/10 pounds of urea per 1,000 square feet. A little over 2 pounds of white granules for an area the size of a 2-car driveway and a bit. 5,000 square foot lawn, 11 pounds for the whole yard. My honest advice, start at half that. 1 pound of urea per 1,000. You'll get a beautiful even response, and you cannot possibly hurt anything. You can always feed again in 3 weeks. You cannot unburn a lawn. What does a burn look like? It shows up a day or two later, not right away. Blades go yellow, then tan, in streaks tracing exactly where you walked or where the spreader threw heavy. Tips go first. In a bad case, you get a dead strip lying beside healthy green grass. That's how you know it was fertilizer and not disease. I'll be straight about the why, because researchers still disagree. Some is the salt effect pulling moisture out of leaf tissue. Some is free ammonia released as the urea breaks down right there on the blade. Different roads, same destination. Granules on leaves cause damage. Granules that reach the soil don't. Mistake number 2 is the big one. The one that costs you money without you ever knowing. Not watering it in. When urea sits on the surface, on thatch, on leaves, on soil that's drying, urea starts working right there in the open air. Instead of becoming ammonium down at the roots, a good share turns to ammonia gas and simply leaves. Penn State. If urea isn't watered in, some of that nitrogen is lost to the air as ammonia, and urease is abundant in soil and thatch, so it gets going fast. The University of Florida found losses across the research running from under 1% to as high as 60%. And here's the study that changed my own habits. Montana State broadcast urea across 13 fields through the cold months. They lost an average of 18% of the nitrogen, and in the worst cases, 44%. Nearly half the bag, gone into the air, and you'd never see a thing. Penn State names what makes it worse. High soil pH, high heat, sandy soils, and thatch. If your lawn has a spongy layer at the base, you're in the higher risk group. So water it in, every time. 1/4 inch is plenty, enough to rinse the granules off the blades and carry them down. If you'd rather not guess, here's a trick my neighbor's mother taught me 60 years ago. Set an empty tuna can on the lawn while the sprinkler runs. An inch standing in the can means an inch went down. 60 years of technology, and I've never found anything that beats a tuna can. Better yet, watch the forecast and put it down ahead of a good soaking rain. Just make sure it's a real rain, not a sprinkle, and not a downpour that runs off into the street. Now mistake number 3. This one's gentle. It's about something the people we learned from got half right. My mother fertilized in the early morning with the dew still on. So did her mother. It seemed obviously correct. Grass is wet. Ground is soft. Everything cool and quiet. Here's what the Montana research found, though. Losses were highest when urea went onto a moist surface with no rain following. A dewy lawn is a wet surface that isn't wet enough. The dew holds the granules up on the blades instead of letting them fall through, then dissolves them right there, in the open, where the ammonia can walk away and the leaf can scorch. So my mother wasn't wrong. She was doing the first half of a 2-part job. The second half is the hose. Fertilize into the dew, water it in right away, or wait until the dew burns off, put it down on dry blades, then water. I think about that a lot. Most of the old ways aren't wrong. They're just missing one piece nobody had the research for yet. That doesn't make the people who taught us foolish. It makes them people doing the best they could with what they had. All right, the whole method in 3 lines. Light. Even, watered in. Light. 1 to 2 pounds of urea per 1,000 square feet. Never more than 2 2/10. Even. Use a spreader and take your time. Better still, cut your rate in half and walk the lawn twice. The second pass crosswise to the first. 2 light passes at right angles cover far more evenly than 1 heavy pass. Hand scattering is what makes those dark blotches next to pale ones. Watered in, 1/4 inch, right away, every time. Do those 3 and you will not burn your lawn. Now the gentlest version of all, and this is what I actually do myself these days. Dissolve it. Urea dissolves in water beautifully. Penn State notes it can be applied as a liquid for exactly that reason. In the turf world, they call it spoon feeding. Small, frequent, gentle doses, instead of one big shock. The USGA priced it on a golf course. Dissolved urea ran $12 an acre, where the same rate from liquid jugs ran $62. Here's my watering can recipe, kept deliberately conservative. 1/2 pound of urea, 8 ounces on a kitchen scale. Weigh it. Don't guess with a cup, because granules pack differently every time. Dissolve in 2 gallons of water, stir until it goes clear, and apply over 1,000 square feet. That delivers about 23/100ths of a pound of nitrogen, under every threshold we've discussed, Purdue's, Virginia Tech's, and Maryland's law. Then rinse the blades with plain water, every 2 to 3 weeks during active growth. What you get is a lawn holding one steady color instead of surging and fading. No feast, no famine, just fed. Now here's the piece this whole cheap fertilizer conversation almost always leaves out, and it matters more than which bag you buy. When? You can buy the right product, spread it perfectly, water it in beautifully, and waste most of it because you put it down in a month when the grass couldn't use it. Purdue says it clearly. Cool season grasses grow in spring and fall, and those are the best times to fertilize. Michigan State points at the window, late August into early September, as nights turn cooler and the rain comes back, with nutrients waiting as the grass moves into strong growth. That's the September morning I opened with. That's the one that matters most. Michigan State also warns about summer. Growth slows or stops in the heat, and a dormant lawn isn't growing, so feeding should wait. And Montana gives you the other end. Cold, wet ground with no rain to carry granules down is the worst combination there is. So for a cool season lawn, fescues, bluegrass, ryegrass, the plan is simple. Feed around Labor Day. Feed again 4 to 6 weeks later, while the grass is still green and growing, but the mowing has slowed. Lightly once more in late spring if you like, and leave it alone in deep heat and on frozen ground. 2 well-timed feedings beat 5 careless ones every year. Now, and this matters enormously, none of that applies if you're in the South. Bermuda, Zoysia, St. Augustine, Centipede, your grass runs on a completely different calendar. It grows in the heat and sleeps in the cool. You feed late spring through summer and stop well before fall. Feeding a warm season lawn in September pushes tender growth right into the first frost. And I need to stop on centipede, because if that's what you have, everything in this video needs turning down. The University of Georgia is direct. 1 pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet per year is ample for most established centipede lawns. Per year, not per feeding. Georgia lists the causes of centipede grass decline, and annual nitrogen over 2 pounds is right there, along with early spring or late fall feeding. And here's the detail I find genuinely moving. Georgia points out that centipede is naturally a light green. If it stays dark green through most of the season, that usually means too much nitrogen. Think about that. The very thing we're all chasing, that deep, rich color, is the warning light on a centipede lawn. Keep pushing and it will thin out and die back 3 to 5 years in. So, know your grass first, then the calendar, then the bag. One more thing about that plain bag that surprised me. 46-0-0. Look at that middle number. 0 phosphorus. That looks like a shortcoming. In much of the country, it's the law. At least 11 states restrict or ban phosphorus fertilizer on lawns. Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Michigan, Minnesota, New Jersey, New York, Vermont, Virginia, Washington, and Wisconsin. Minnesota was first. You may apply phosphorus only if a soil test shows your ground needs it, or if you're putting in a brand new lawn. So the humble bag with the 0 in the middle isn't missing something. In a dozen states, it's the compliant choice. Cheaper, simpler, and kinder to the water. That combination doesn't come along often. Now 3 things that cost nothing at all and make everything we've discussed work harder. First, leave your clippings on the lawn. This is free money, and most people bag it and set it at the curb. The University of Missouri found returned clippings supply up to 25% of a lawn's total fertilizer needs. Penn State's 3-year study found bluegrass clippings held 46 to 59% of the nitrogen applied. A quarter of your fertilizer bill, sitting in the bag on the back of your mower. Second, mow higher. Michigan State, 3 inches or more shades the soil, cuts evaporation, reduces weed seed germination, crabgrass especially, and gives the plant more leaf surface to feed itself. Taller grass grows deeper roots, and deeper roots reach more of the nitrogen you put down. Third, sweep the walks. When granules bounce onto the driveway, take 30 seconds and sweep them back onto the grass. Free fertilizer going where you wanted it, instead of down the storm drain. Now the honest limits, because I'd be doing you a disservice otherwise. Urea is quick release. It greens fast and doesn't last as long as a coated slow-release product. That's the trade. Feed lighter and more often, instead of twice a year and forget it. Urea gives you nitrogen and nothing else. No potassium, no iron, no magnesium. Most established lawns are hungriest for nitrogen, but sandy soils can run short on potassium. It's also acid-forming. Repeated use nudges soil pH down over the years. Which brings me to what I'd honestly tell you to do first, before buying anything. Call your county extension office about a soil test. Penn State notes the kits are right there for a small fee. It costs about what 1 bag of fancy fertilizer costs, and it tells you what your ground actually needs. 2 practical notes. Urea pulls moisture out of the air and sets up like a brick if you leave the bag open in a damp garage. Pour it into a 5-gallon bucket with a sealing lid, and keep it labeled, off the floor, away from children and pets. Don't mix it with anything else. It doesn't need help. After you water it in, let the lawn dry before the dog goes back out. So let me tie this together, because it was never really about a bag. That plain sack holds a compound a young man made by accident in 1828 that broke a 2,000-year-old idea about what life was. It carries a number people are paid to verify. It costs about $2 per 1,000 square feet, and it's the same nitrogen the superintendent puts on the tournament green. Using it well takes 3 things: a light hand, an even pass, and a hose. But here's what I really want to leave you with. Missouri notes that heavy spring nitrogen pushes out a flush of leaf growth the plant didn't need, and can leave the lawn more vulnerable when summer comes. And Georgia tells us a centipede lawn that stays too dark green is a lawn being harmed. Green is not the same as healthy. We're taught to read color as success. Darker is better, faster is better. But a lawn that shoots up dark green in April on a heavy feeding has spent everything on leaves it can't support. Come August, it's standing there with nothing underneath. The expensive bag never taught me that. It taught me to buy more of it. The plain bag taught me restraint. When you're measuring 2 pounds of something powerful, instead of dumping 12 pounds of something diluted, you slow down. You pay attention. You watch the weather and the calendar instead of the label. And that, not the money, is what actually changed my lawn. Do the few right things and trust the season. It's the only lawn advice I've ever found that keeps being true. Now I'd like to hear from you, and I mean that sincerely. Tell me about the lawns and gardens you grew up around. Did your mother or your grandmother have a way of doing this that got handed down? Was there a day on the calendar in your family when things got fed? After the first frost, when the lilacs bloomed, the weekend after Labor Day? Tell me in the comments. Say where you are and what you're growing, so folks nearby can find each other. And if you've used urea already, tell us how it went, the good and the bad. Somebody reading this is standing in a farm store right now trying to decide. I read every one of them. I always do. And if this saved you money, or saved you from a burnt strip across the front yard, pass it to the neighbor who's been hauling home those expensive bags every spring. Take care of yourselves, my friends. Take care of your soil, and I'll see you in the garden.